Hi, welcome to Prerona Television Canada. We are very happy that we are continuing our regular weekly leadership speaker series. And today is our 22nd episode. And this is every week we are continuing this uh, session. So we are very happy with that. So we'll be expecting our speaker shortly. And just wait. So we'll be expecting our speaker shortly, and we are actually starting with our session. As you know, that we will be uh, doing the Bengali services, Bengali and English services. So we'll be sharing briefly about this particular topic in Bengali, and then we'll be sharing mostly this training session will be in English. So thank you very much those who are following with us. As you know that we are continuing these sessions every uh, Wednesday, which is Canada time, like Eastern Standard, Mountain Standard Time in Edmonton at 9 p.m. And in Toronto it is 11 p.m. Toronto, that is Eastern Standard Time, and in Dhaka, Bangladesh, it is actually 10 a.m. in the morning on Thursday, and in India it is 9:30 a.m. In the morning on Thursday. Thank you very much those who are following with us. We'll be Our topic today is leadership and emotional intelligence. So is one of those uh, topic that is actually very important, as we know that we are conducting these sessions every week. We will be expecting our uh, we'll be expecting our speaker shortly. So I will be sharing with you briefly about the topic and the rationale why we're discussing this topic. So uh, let me share my screen and I will share with you what we are discussing today. We're just waiting the screens to come, so then I will share with you the topic. As we know that this particular series is actually conducted every week, and we are conducting this session. Sorry, okay, I think it's not done yet. Okay, all right. So uh, at first, actually, my role I will be speaking in Bengali, and then our speaker will come and he will share in English, and then I will have summarize. আজকে আপনাদের সবাইকে প্রেরণা টেলিভিশনের পক্ষ থেকে স্বাগতম জানাচ্ছি। আমরা খুবই আনন্দিত যে আজকে আমরা আপনাদের সাথে আমাদের রেগুলার লিডারশিপ স্পিকার সিরিজ যে সেশন আমাদের হয় প্রত্যেক সপ্তাহে, তারই 22তম পর্বে আছি। আজকে যে বিষয়ে আমরা আলোচনা করব সেটা লিডারশিপ এবং ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স। তো আজকে আমাদের স্পিকার উইল জয়েন শর্টলি। আর যদি টেকনিক্যাল ডিফিকাল্টির জন্য না হয় তাহলে আমি আপনাদের সাথে পরে ইংরেজিতে আলোচনা করব। তো আজকে এখানে আমরা সাধারণত আমাদের সেশন শুরু করি কোড দিয়ে বা উদ্ধৃতি দিয়ে। তো প্রথম যে উদ্ধৃতি রয়েছে যে লিডার্স হু ডোন্ট লিসেন উইল ইভেন্চুয়ালি বি সারাউন্ডেড বাই পিপল হু হ্যাভ নাথিং টু সে। সো আমাদের লিডার বা যারা নেতৃত্ব রয়েছে তাদের একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ গুণাগুণের মধ্যে রয়েছে তাদের শোনার যে ক্ষমতা বা আহ, থাকতে হবে। যদি না থাকে তাহলে আমরা কিন্তু সেই ফিডব্যাকটা আমরা পাচ্ছি না অন্যদের কাছে। তো ইট ইজ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট। তো আমাদের লিডারের সেই গুণাগুণ আমাদের থাকতে হবে। আর একটা কোড যেটা রয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে ইফেক্টিভ লিডারশিপ ইজ নট অ্যাবাউট মেকিং স্পিচেস আর বিং লাইকড, লিডারশিপ ইজ ডিফাইন্ড বাই রেজাল্টস নট অ্যাট্রিবিউটস। পিটার ড্রাকার। তো এইখানে আম, যে সাধারণত লিডারশিপের যে বিষয়টা আছে এটা সাধারণত বড় বড় বক্তৃতা বা সেইটা না, বাট এটা যে তাদের যে রেজাল্ট বা লিডারশিপের যে নেতৃত্বের যে গুণাগুণ এটা নির্ধারণ হয় তাদের যে ফলাফল বা তারা কি আনতে পারে। তো এটা খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়। তারপরে আমাদের আর একটা উদ্ধৃতি রয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে লিডার ইজ সামওয়ান হু ডেমনস্ট্রেট হোয়াটস পসিবল। লিডারের মধ্যে এমন একটা গুণাগুণ থাকতে হবে যে আহ, যেটা সম্ভব, ডেমনস্ট্রেট যেটা করা সম্ভব। তো লিডারের এই গুণাগুণটা থাকতে হবে। তারপরে আমরা যদি আর একটু যাই আমাদের যে স্পিকার উনি বোধহয় এসে গেছেন। আমরা খুবই আনন্দিত, বিকজ কিছু টেকনিক্যাল বিষয় ছিল যেটার জন্য উনি আসতে পারেননি। তো আশা করি উনি এখন আমাদের সাথে আছেন। তারপরে আমি আপনাদের সাথে খুব ব্রিফলি আলোচনা করব। উনি ওনার পরবর্তী সেশনটা বা ইংরেজিতে উনি এটা এক্সপ্লেন করবেন। তো এখানে ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সটা বলতে কি বোঝায়, ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের বা বলতে আমরা কি বুঝি আর কি। সো এটার আর একটা নাম আছে ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের, যেটা বলা হয় ইমোশনাল quotient or EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, and overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. তো এখানে আমরা সামারি যেটা বুঝি যে আমাদের যে ইমোশন রয়েছে বা আমাদের যে আবেগ রয়েছে, আবেগটাকে আমরা নিয়ন্ত্রণ করার যে পদ্ধতি রয়েছে, যে যার ফলশ্রুতিতে আমরা কি করতে পারি, কমিউনিকেট ইফেক্টিভলি মানে আমরা ভালো যোগাযোগ করতে পারি। এমপাথাইজ উইথ আদার্স মানে অন্যের সুখে দুঃখে বা অন্যকে আমরা তাদের সমস্যাটা থাকতে আমাদের নিজের মতো করে তাদের মতো করে বোঝাটা যে শক্তিটা সেটা থাকে। এবং ওভারকাম চ্যালেঞ্জ ডিফিউজ কনফ্লিক্ট, তার মানে এই ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের মাধ্যমে বা আবেগ নিয়ন্ত্রণের মাধ্যমে আমরা কি করতে পারি, যদি আমাদের চ্যালেঞ্জ থাকে এবং ডিফিউজ কনফ্লিক্ট, যদি আমাদের মানে কনফ্লিক্ট বা সমস্যা বা বিরোধটাকে কিভাবে আমরা নিষ্পত্তি করতে পারি, সেটা আমাদের ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের মাধ্যমে বোঝানো হয়েছে। তো ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের যে বিষয়টা আর একটা বিষয় রয়েছে যে কনসার্ন দ্য এবিলিটি টু ক্যারি আউট অ্যাকুরেট রিজনিং অ্যাবাউট ইমোশন and ability to use emotional knowledge to enhance thought। তার মানে এটা আসলে উদ্দেশ্যটা কি, ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স বা আবেগ নিয়ন্ত্রণের উদ্দেশ্যটা কি? তার মানে আমাদের যে ক্ষমতা, আমরা একুরেট রিজনিং আমরা করতে পারি, যা আমরা করছি তার কি কারণে করছি সেই রিজনিংটা আমাদের থাকতে হবে, এবং ইমোশনাল নলেজ আমাদের এটা বাড়াতে হবে যাতে আমাদের থট প্রসেসটা আমাদের পারে আর কি এখানে। তো আর একটা ব্যাপার হচ্ছে যে ইমোশনাল যে প্যারালাল ওয়ার্ডস যেগুলো রয়েছে, যে ভার্বাল কম্প্রিহেনশন ইন্টেলিজেন্স, পারসেপচুয়াল অর্গানাইজেশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স। তো এই বিষয়গুলো আমরা আহ, আলোচনা করব। তো 5 কম্পোনেন্টস অফ ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স, এখানে 5টা কম্পোনেন্ট রয়েছে ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স। এখানে গোল্ডম্যান 1988 সালে হার্ভার্ড বিজনেস রিভিউতে যেটা বলেছেন যে টক্স অ্যাবাউট 5 components of EI, and they are self awareness, self regulation, motivation, empathy and social skill. তো প্রথম যে বিষয়টা রয়েছে সেলফ অ্যাওয়ারনেস, মানে নিজের যে প্রতি যে আহ, আত্মসচেতনতা, যেটা আত্মসচেতনতা আমাদের মধ্যে থাকতে হবে। এটা মানে আমরা আমাদের নিজেদেরকে জানা, মানে নো দাই সেলফ, আমাদের নিজেদেরকে জানা। সেলফ রেগুলেশন, নিজেদেরকে নিয়ন্ত্রণ করা, আত্মনিয়ন্ত্রণ করার যে শক্তিটা সেটা। এবং তারপরে যেটা রয়েছে সেটা হচ্ছে মোটিভেশন। মোটিভেশন যেটাকে আমরা, এটা ওয়ান অফ দ্য কম্পোনেন্টস অফ দ্য ইআই। এবং আরেকটা বিষয় রয়েছে এমপ্যাথি। এমপ্যাথি বলতে আমরা যেটা বুঝি যে আমরা যদি কারো আম, অন্যের যে অন্যের মতো করে যদি আমরা চিন্তা করি, যেমন সিম্প্যাথি হচ্ছে যে কারো দুঃখে আমরা হয়তো বা বললাম যে আমি খুব সরি, দুঃখিত। বা এমপ্যাথিতে আমরা যেটা করি যে তার তার মতো করে বা তার অবস্থায় থেকে আমরা বুঝতে চেষ্টা করি বা তার সংবেদনা করার চেষ্টা করি। এরপরে রয়েছে সোশ্যাল স্কিল। এবং আলটিমেটলি আমাদের ইআই এর আরেকটা বিষয় রয়েছে যার জন্য আমাদের, এটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের যে সোশ্যাল স্কিল বা সামাজিক যে দক্ষতা রয়েছে। এই সোশ্যাল স্কিলের মাধ্যমে আমরা সমাজে যেহেতু বাস করি, তা আমাদের সমাজে বা বিভিন্ন মানুষের সাথে কিভাবে যোগাযোগ করা, তারপরে তাদের সাথে কোলাবোরেশন করা, যে বিভিন্ন রকম সামাজিক জীব হিসাবে আমাদের যে বৈশিষ্ট্যগুলো রয়েছে, বৈশিষ্ট্যগুলোকে আমাদেরকে ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সের মাধ্যমে, আত্মনিয়ন্ত্রণের মাধ্যমে আমরা নিয়ন্ত্রণ করতে পারি। তারপরে আমাদের আর একটা রিডিফাইন করা হয়েছে ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্সকে। গোল্ডেন রজার্স ডিফাইন এমপ্যাথি অ্যাজ অ্যাকিউরেটলি পারসিভিং দ্য ইন্টারনাল ফ্রেম অফ রেফারেন্স অফ অ্যানাদার। তার মানে অন্যেরটা নিজের মতো করে বোঝা আর কি, তার মতো করে আমরা যদি এটা বুঝতে পারি, ফ্রেম অফ রেফারেন্স, তাহলে ইন আদার ওয়ার্ডস এমপ্যাথি ইজ ক্যাপাসিটি টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড অর ফিল হোয়াট অ্যানাদার পারসন ইজ এক্সপিরিয়েন্সিং। অন্য ব্যক্তি তারা যে ধরনের সমস্যা বা যে ধরনের অভিজ্ঞতা তারা উপলব্ধি করছে, সেটা আমাদের, সেটা সেটা বোঝার যে ক্ষমতা, ক্ষমতাটা আমাদেরকে আহ, বলা হয় এমপ্যাথি। তো লিডারশিপ অ্যান্ড সোশ্যাল স্কিল সম্পর্কে যেটা বলা আছে যে সোশ্যাল স্কিল ইজ দ্য এবিলিটি টু ম্যানেজ ইউর কনভারসেশন ইন এনি এনভায়রনমেন্ট। মানে যে কোনো এনভায়রনমেন্টে আমাদের আমাদের যে কনভারসেশনটাকে আমাদের একটা বুঝা বা দক্ষতা যদি অর্জন করি, সেটা আমাদের সোশ্যাল স্কিল। আর লিডার মাস্ট হ্যাভ আ ডিসেন্ট সোশ্যাল স্কিল। তার মানে প্রত্যেকটা নেতারই একটা ডিসেন্ট বা একটা ভালো সোশ্যাল স্কিল কিন্তু তার থাকতে হবে। মানে একটা অ্যাভারেজ, মানে যেটা গ্রহণযোগ্য, এখানে ডিসেন্ট যে শব্দটা আমাদের গ্রহণযোগ্য যদি বলি, যে গ্রহণযোগ্য একটা সোশ্যাল স্কিল থাকতে হবে। ইন ইটস এইট, ইটস ইমোশনাল ইন্টেলিজেন্স, কমন সেন্স, এমপ্যাথি, ক্লিয়ার ভিশন অফ থিংস, ভিউ অফ দ্য এনভায়রনমেন্ট। তো এটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের কমন সেন্স থাকতে হবে, এমপ্যাথি থাকতে হবে, ক্লিয়ার ভিশন মানে আমাদের পরিষ্কার ধারণা থাকতে হবে, এবং এনভায়রনমেন্টাল বিষয়, আমাদের যে পরিবেশ রয়েছে, পরিবেশ সম্পর্কে আমাদের ধারণা থাকতে হবে। তো সিচুয়েশন ইনফ্লুয়েন্সেস অ্যাফেক্টিং লিডারশিপ। কি কি সিচুয়েশনাল ইনফ্লুয়েন্সেস আছে যেটা আমাদের লিডারশিপকে প্রভাবিত করে? তো অ্যাফেক্টিং লিডারশিপ, সো ফার্স্ট আমরা যেটা আলোচনা দেখি যেখানে প্যাশন ও রেশনালিটি। তো প্যাশন রেশনালিটি, যেটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা প্যাশনেটলি যেটা কাজটা করি, রেশনালিটি যেটা হচ্ছে যে আম, আমরা যে কাজটা করছি এটার যৌক্তিকতা কি, যৌক্তিকতা, রেশনাল এটা আমাদের বোঝা। তারপর আর একটা বিষয় রয়েছে যেটা হচ্ছে যে ইগো, অ্যাটিটিউড অ্যান্ড বিহেভিয়ার। আমরা অনেক সময় দেখি যে আমাদের বিভিন্ন পরিস্থিতিতে আমরা বিভিন্নভাবে এটা রিয়াক্ট করি। যেমন যদি বলি একজন মিডল জুনিয়র আমার ম্যানেজার বা আমাকে একটা কথা বলছে যেটা আমি মনে করছি যে ইট ইজ আমার জন্য অপমানজনক, বিকজ সে এটা জানে বেশি। আমাদের অনেক অর্গানাইজেশনে আমরা লক্ষ্য করি যে, তো আমাদের মধ্যে একটা ইগো কাজ করে যে না, আমি তো আমি ম্যানেজার, ওয়াই আমি তার কথা শুনবো, বা আমি সুপারভাইজার, আমার ইজ এন এমপ্লয়ি, বা আমার জুনিয়র, তার কথা কেন শুনবো? ইগোটা, এটিটিউডটা, বিহেভিয়ার, এটা কিন্তু সিচুয়েশনাল ইনফ্লুয়েন্সটা আমাদের লিডারশিপ বা নেতৃত্বের দিকে আমাদেরকে প্রভাবিত করে। এবং ল্যাক অফ আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং, অনেক সময় আমরা বুঝতে পারি না আমাদের পার্টিকুলার সিচুয়েশনে, আমরা কিন্তু বিষয়টা বুঝতে পারি না। তো এটা ল্যাক অফ আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং। এবং আমাদের যদি লো আইকিউ থাকে বা ইকিউ, ইমোশনাল, এইটা আমাদেরকে এটাও আমাদেরকে ইজ ওয়ান অফ দা, মানে আমাদের সোশ্যাল ইনফ্লুয়েন্সেস। তারপরে স্ট্রেট মাইন্ড নট ওপেন ডিউ টু প্রেশার। অনেক সময় আমরা এত প্রেশারে থাকি বা আমাদের কাজের অনেক চাপ থাকে, তাহলে আমরা অনেক সময় আমাদের গ্রহণযোগ্য না, আমরা কোনো কিছু নতুন কিছু বা ওপেন আমাদের মাইন্ড অনেক সময় থাকে না প্রেশারের জন্য বা মানসিক চাপের জন্য। তারপর হচ্ছে মেন্টাল মেকআপ বা মানসিক সেরকম প্রস্তুতি যদি না থাকে আমাদের, আমরা যদি সেই ধরনের ভাবে আমরা অ্যাকাস্টমড যদি না হই, তাহলে আমাদের কিন্তু এটা একটা সিচুয়েশনাল ইনফ্লুয়েন্স আমাদের লিডারদেরকে এফেক্ট করে বা প্রভাবিত করে। তো আলটিমেটলি আমাদের যেটা হচ্ছে মিলিয়ন ডলার কোয়েশ্চেন, আমরা পরে আরো আলোচনা করব। আমাদের বা বক্তা আমাদের সাথে রয়েছেন এখন, উনি আমাদের সাথে ডিসকাস করবেন। তো মিলিয়ন ডলার কোশ্চেনে যেটা বলা হয়েছে, শুড ইমোশন বি গিভেন মোর ভ্যালু টু কম্পেয়ার টু রেশনালিটি স্পেশালি ফর আ লিডার। লিডারের জন্য কি এই ইমোশনটা, যে যে আবেগটা, এটা কি বেশি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ যদি আমরা রেশনালিটি বা যেটা যে যৌক্তিক যে আমরা যে বিবেচনা আছে তার তার সাথে যদি আমরা তুলনা করি, কোনটা বেশি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ? তো এটা আমরা আলোচনা করব। আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের যে বক্তা বা আমাদের যে স্পিকার রয়েছেন রেগুলার, উনি আমাদের সাথে তার বিষয় শেয়ার করবেন এবং তারপরে আমরা যাব। তো আমি এখন অ্যাডভোকেট জিয়াউর রহমান, সিইও আইআইটিএম অ্যান্ড একজন ফ্যাকাল্টি আইইউবি, আমি তাকে আমন্ত্রণ জানাচ্ছি, আপনি আপনার সেশন শুরু করেন। আপনাকে আনমিউট করতে, ইউ হ্যাভ টু আনমিউট।
Thank you very much. I'm really sorry that we could not start our presentation on time because of some technical difficulties. Um, Good evening in Canada and good morning in Bangladesh and rest of the world. Today's session is on leadership and emotional intelligence. So we had just done the Bengali part first, and today we are doing the English part afterwards. So we will probably come back to the Bengali part at the end of my presentation. Let me move on to the presentation. So can you move to the next slide, please? Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay. Normally, I start off with a set of definitions and or a quotation. So in this case, I have a quotation. So it says, "Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say." It's by Andy Stanley. So in other words, what it's trying to say is that if you don't listen as a leader, ultimately the good people who has the capacity to influence you, who has the knowledge base, skill set to develop a certain thing or certain understanding or certain product or service around you, be it a social service, be it a business service, or maybe it might be a political service or a political perspective. So the whole point of a good leader is to engage people, bring people's ideas on, and if you are close to taking ideas from people, ultimately the good people around you will not be there to support you. They will not be there to say things further. They might ultimately close themselves down, or they might leave your organization and you will not even know that the attrition has taken place. The brains of the organization are no longer resonating with you. It's about a good feel good factor, whether you are allowing them to respond to you or not. So this is important area. A good leader must let the people around himself or herself to speak up, to share thoughts, ideas, etc. So moving to the next slide, please. Here's another quotation. It's by Peter Drucker. Effective leadership is not about making speeches or being liked. Leadership is defined by results, not attributes. So let me start from the back of this quotation. Every good leader is uh, based on the actions that he or she takes. That means the outcome that he or she brings to the table. You might be a good leader in the sense you might be a good speaker. You might be reasonably good influencer. When you speak, people listen. That could be one area, but that is one trait leadership. But in totality, a good leader is someone who sees the process to its end. That means The execution is so very important for a leader. The idea is that I, as a leader, is sharing with my team. I have to be convinced, of course, I have to convey my message to the people in the right earnest. But the end of the day, are the people working with me? Are they listening to what I'm suggesting? Are they truly being inspired, doing the work that needs to be done in order to get to that final destination that I have envisioned or we have envisioned together? So this is very important. This is by Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is a very famous uh, strategist and an author, a academician, etc. So, what the perspective that this quotation is driving at is absolutely vital for success for a leader. That is, actions speaks louder than words. We know that for a very long time. So, if you want to be a true leader, you engage with your people. That's one component. You discuss ideas with your people. That's another component. The third and most final component is, are they listening to you? Are they responding on the floor with the ideas you're sharing? That is the most important thing. And that is the point of action. So when you have people doing actions around you based on your philosophy, based on your perspective and your vision, then you are actually a true leader. Can you move to the next slide, please? A leader is someone who demonstrates what is possible. Mark Yarnell. This is in line with the previous slide. The word that we have to look at is demonstrates what is possible. So, in other words, leader is showing the path and actually executing the outcome in a certain way, or making it so simple for people that it becomes possible. So, again, it's about getting it done. It's about doing things in action. So the leader is someone who's doing certain actions, and people are listening to those actions and realizing that yes, this is the way forward, and our leader has shown us the path, or this is how we need to proceed in order to get to the final outcome. So in other words, a true leader is responding to the challenges of the market, showing the path, doing the activity himself or herself, at the same time guiding the people who are going to be doing the activity. If it's a very complex set of activity, obviously the leader will be activities. Leaders must be probably guiding the team. The team members will do the activity based on the complexity of the activity or based on the complexity of the vision that is being thought of and is being considered to be employed in the marketplace. The leader will have to take his or her positioning with regards to the complexity of a particular action. So this is very important. At the end, the last two slides, the last two quotations are pretty much the same thing. The leader has to make meaningful actions to show visibly that a certain outcome is about to happen or in the process of being happening. So can we move to the next slide? So today's session we talked about is on leadership and emotional intelligence. So these are intricately connected ideas. Emotional intelligence, we have a long definition here. I'll just quickly go over the long definition and also bring it to your, you know, bring it down to a more manageable understanding of emotional intelligence. First, let me talk about emotional intelligence, is also known as EQ. It's the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way, to relieve stress, communicate effectively, and empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. So it's a package of many things, actually. It's a package of many things. We had shared this slide previously in my last presentation or the one immediately before, but I want to bring it up in a slightly different way in today's context of connecting it with leadership. So it's truly an ability of a leader, in the sense that the leader must have this quality, emotional intelligence. And what is it? It's your strength of understanding and then using, as we talked about in the previous slide, being able to use and implement things. So, and the person with good emotional intelligence would not only understand the context, they or he or she will able to use it on the ground, make it into an actionable piece. And at, while doing it, you have to have the control mechanism on your mindset, the view that you hold. You can't be vacillating, you can't be changing things left to right. Then the entire team will be confused. And at the end, there will be no outcome. People will go in multiple directions without knowing truly the proper direction in which you wanted to move the entire team. You wanted to champion the process. So the the holistic perspective is to understand the entire process, being there at the thick of thing of doing these things, and finally managing your emotions, your resources, your thoughts and perspective, so that the outcome is properly navigated to, outcome is properly arrived at. So we are looking at positive ways to also reduce your stress, because every new action create a little bit a certain level of stress, and we know that for sure. When you do certain things which are absolutely mundane, you do that on a regular basis, the level of stress is much lower. But when you are exposed to new ideas and new ways of communicating things, then the stress level goes up. Just to give you an example, today the webinar concept has been slightly redefined, and we had to go and register in order to get into the webinar. So it created a little bit of stress in my mind, although I know it's not a very difficult task, but the stress level went up, let's say 10%. So as a leader, you have to know that when things are going slightly different or you are in a very complex environment, the you have to have the perspective of managing your stress, and that is also part of the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. So relieving stress in a positive way, then communicating the stress in a positive way, whatever things needs to be done. If you are holding it onto yourself and not responding, or people are asking you different questions, you have a flurry of queries and you are not responding right away, you might be thinking that let me get it done, then I will explain. Sometimes it's not the most appropriate way, and that's part of emotional intelligence. That's part of understanding what is needed to be done at the right moment, so that the right output or right set of input you can provide, right set of input actually connects you to the right set of output. So information in the right way at the right time with the right messaging and right earnest will ultimately give you the right output that you are intending, or an output which is close to your vision that you have set out for the entire team. So the other issue with regards to emotional intelligence is your empathizing with the situation. What empathize means we will discuss later in a larger capacity, but just to quickly bring the idea to you, empathize means you are in the other person's shoes. If you're wearing your shoes, you will know the comfort zone or the pain points. But if you don't wear the other person's shoes, you will not know his or her thorny issues, frustrations, stress level, etc. So the whole idea is that when you empathize with a situation, you are actually not within yourself, you're within the mind of the other person, the way the other person is thinking, the feelings the other person is getting, etc. So you have to be a empathetic person when you're talking about having proper emotional intelligence. And then what is needed is to overcome the challenges. If you're mired in conflict, if you're mired in obstacles, you don't, you're swimming or almost sinking, then ultimately the outcome will be very negative. So that is not the what should I say? That is not the scope of a proper leader, and that is not how a proper leader should respond to the challenges of the market. So having these You can also diffuse conflict. If there is a conflict, a good leader with proper emotional intelligence will actually deliver a better outcome, because he or she will know the circumstances. He or she will be able to engage in proper conversation, direct the direction of the entire conversation, and navigate it towards safer shores where an outcome may come about. So conflict resolution is an important area where emotional intelligence plays significantly. We know that emotional intelligence is very important when it comes to disaster type of situation. If you're looking at a disaster zone and you need to give immediate flood relief, food relief, etc., then emotional intelligence is extremely vital, because you have to quickly understand the condition and the pangs and the frustrations of the people who are to be supported right away, and you really don't have much time. You have to make a quick decision based on the activities or the desperation that you're seeing in a flood prone zone, or in a refugee infested area, or an extremely complex warring zone. So when you read on material on emotional intelligence, you see in these areas the emotional intelligence plays a significant role.
Uh, Sorry for that interruptions, I guess, because of technical electricity failure. I guess our speaker is just disconnected. So I'm just continuing. Just a minute. All right. So we are extremely sorry. There's electricity failure from the other side. So we'll be sharing again the screen and see. Yeah. All right. So we were discussing about the definition of emotional intelligence. We'll just continue in case our speaker is late. So uh, we have been discussing what is emotional intelligence. So otherwise known as emotional quotient or EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve stress. That means um, here the reason, the rationale why we're discussing this one is just to understand, just to relieve stress, communicate effectively. So these are the benefits that we are getting through the
I'm
emotional intelligence.
I am
Okay, so
I'm back
Advocate
on.
here, Rahman, you can continue.
Yes, I'm sorry. The internet facility in Bangladesh is right now choppy for the last few hours for some reason. So can you move to the next slide on emotional intelligence? Okay, this is the shorter version of emotional intelligence. To get a easier understanding, I have this definition. Emotional intelligence concerns the ability to carry out accurate reasoning about emotions and the ability to use emotions and emotional knowledge to enhance thought. So, in other words, what he's trying to say is every situation needs a certain level of comprehension, certain level of understanding, certain level of engagement in your thought process. Anything that we do in life, the at the end, it is a culmination. Anything that we do, it's a culmination of activities, and emotional intelligence is actually helping us to get to that position, get to that status, get to that objective. So uh, we have to blend in our knowledge, our skill set, our common understanding, and our ability to manage all the resources together so that we achieve and we drive towards a particular direction. And this is what we're talking about in the sense of enhancing our thought. So the crux of the matter is emotional intelligence is vital for almost anyone, whether you're a leader or not. Every situation demands a certain level of emotional intelligence. Previously, we had heard the notion of IQ, intelligence quotient. So these days, in the last 20, 30 years, the entire idea of not just being smart, being quick at understanding certain things, you also have to have the understanding of the entire process in its entirety, having a clear vision of what people are wanting so that you can frame your message and you can bring people together. You can bring people together. So that is very important. And I believe that a good leader has to drive these issues in such a way that he or she has that understanding level and the empathetic level of the entire situation so that the outcome from this process is properly understood by his or her team member. This is absolutely an essential issue of emotional intelligence, and why I believe a leader is so vital who holds proper emotional intelligence is clearly understood in the sense that if without emotional intelligence, even if you have skills and if you have knowledge, you will not be able to be successful. So I would suggest everyone listening to the presentation to start thinking as to how you can build your emotional intelligence and connect your emotional intelligence with the right knowledge and skill set for you to move in as a good leader. Can you move to the next slide, please? These are parallel words in the academic world. These are similar ideas and similar constructs. So I've just brought them out to you so that you know. Emotional intelligence in some places are connected to the concept of verbal comprehension intelligence. It is sometimes connected to perceptual organizational intelligence. So, what is verbal comprehension intelligence? Verbal comprehension is the way you speak to people and the ideas that you get out of your communication. So you go into a discussion, you go into a team meeting, and you share certain ideas, you get some feedback, people are responding, people are talking in a particular way. So these are important components where you're making a sense of the total situation. Making a sense of the total situation is part of your verbal comprehension. If you didn't understand the communication, then you will probably make faulty judgments. So the verbal communication intelligence is having the ability to understand what is being suggested, what is being said. So in order for you to have good verbal comprehension intelligence, you must have a reasonable understanding of the language in which things are being shared. So let's say you are in a Spanish speaking environment and you have just learned the language of Spanish. You have a limited understanding of the language. You are very sharp in your own particular language, which might be English or Bangla or anything. But when you are now thrown as a manager into a Spanish speaking country and you have small, you have average comprehension of the language, so you will not be able to facilitate the conversation in the best quickest way, and your outcomes will be slightly choppy. So this is really the concept of verbal comprehension intelligence, and this is connected with your emotional intelligence. They are intricately connected. So in order for someone to have good emotional intelligence, they must also have a good verbal comprehension intelligence. The next one is perceptual organizational intelligence. Perception is vital. Perception is how we think things, how we see things. Two people seeing the same thing will respond in a slightly different way. Two people hearing certain things will have a certain view which might be slightly different, and depends on your global and holistic makeup, your mental model. We talked about mental model, and this is important. The way you have been groomed, the way you have actually grown up in society has an intricate influence on the way you will think. So perceptual organizational intelligence is the intelligence that you gather through sensory perceptions, through looking at things, through visualizing certain things, and then whatever understanding you capture from that environment would be very important. For example, I will give you an example of, let's say you grew up uh, in a family where there are a lot of family members, and every day there are a lot of discussions, even small fights may not be very uh, it may be very innocuous fights, harmless fights, but a lot of heavy discussion takes place. So if you are thrown into a new business environment where you are actively working as a manager, and where a lot of people are stressing on different things, as a person who has gained a previous understanding of a different environment in a different mindset, that particular environment will be reasonably easy for you to understand. Whereas someone who had never been thrown into an environment where he or she has to uh, interact with so many people at a given day, almost every day, that person will be perhaps a quieter person, perhaps, and will be more a person who would be intuitive, a thinking person, because he or she really didn't have much people around his or her life to respond to. So the two set of people, in one set you came up from a very boisterous environment, very busy environment, and the other person who came out through life in a very very simple environment, in the sense that people are not very many people were around you. So your worldview and the person with a complex environments worldview will be different. I'm not suggesting that that person per se will automatically be a better person in terms of communication. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm suggesting that the emotional intelligence that the other person will capture uh, in through his or her life, and being able to manage a complex situation might be slightly better than this person who didn't go through the complex set of environment through which he or she grew up, where technically he didn't or she didn't grow up with many people around. So the emotional intelligence and emotional understanding and the perceptual understanding would be slightly different for this person. It may be very good, but probability is the other person will have a greater perceptual organizational understanding and intelligence. So these issues are so important in your leadership design, in your leadership planning, and in your understanding of the context in which you are to execute certain actions, who you would be taking on board in order to get certain actions under your belt. That is very important. So emotional intelligence is a extremely powerful construct, an extremely powerful tool that should be sitting in your mind, and that you can partly acquire, but it actually comes through your life's experience and the learnings and knowledge base that you gather, and through societal and cultural interaction with people. That's how you actually develop your emotional intelligence. So it's partly nurtured, partly a talent that you may have. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay. This is an interesting area where this gentleman called Goldman, an academician, had actually written out many material on the area of emotional intelligence, and in some quarters, he is also considered one of the fathers of this initiative, this movement on emotional intelligence. So he actually talks about five components of emotional intelligence that are necessary for every person, especially a leader, to succeed in life. So, first one is self awareness. This is something we must realize. If you don't understand who you are, or what is your strength area, or what level in society you are involved in, that becomes very difficult. So, a holistic 360-degree angle and understanding of yourself is very important. Just like the concept of know thyself is about self awareness. So, you must be aware of your positioning, you must be aware of your context, your the people around whom you're working with, their reality, your reality, and how your reality and their reality works together. Is there a proper communication, or is there a friction, or whether there are points of sore areas that can turn out to be thorny? So you have to know that. Self-regulation is another area. If you want to develop as a leader, you have to grow your strengths. So you have to regulate yourself in the spirit that the domains in which you have less strength, you don't want to expose them. You want to improve upon them, and you want to regulate the areas where you have extreme capacity. You know that you may have extreme capacity and you can move in very high speed, but is your team ready for them to engage with you in that capacity, in that speed? That is important. So you also have to sometimes self-regulate your strengths in order for you to not be the lone star moving miles ahead of the rest of the gang, and ultimately after a while you realize that you have moved so far ahead than your team that the entire team has lost hope, and the entire team is mired in confusion, not knowing what to do next, because you thought that they have already picked up through the trail and actually proceeding in the right direction as you are, but in reality they are in the midst of complexity. They have too many questions to ask. They didn't ask you all these questions. You had thought that they had properly understood and they will be able to pick their way into the horizon in the direction where you're moving. But that didn't pan out. So they are confused, they are flustered, and their energy levels have sapped, their motivations are down. They can't see the future, their vision and your vision has a complete disconnect. It can happen, even if you might be very smart. So sometimes self regulation as to hold your horses, as to hold your strengths, and be there with your team. Be there along with your team so that the team feels comfortable around you and produces the right set of results. So that's very important in an area of emotional intelligence for a proper leader. Motivation is also very important. Emotional intelligent people understands the positioning of the people around them. They can understand the pulse of the team. They can understand the areas which needs to be looked into professionally, and the areas where you need some mental nourishment and a nudge. So a good emotionally intelligent person will know at given points where to provide the pep talk, where to provide the nourishment, where to provide the strong influencing words, where to pat their shoulders, etc. So this motivation might be in different ways. It could be a monetary incentive, it could be a verbal incentive, it could be a pep talk, it could be a speech where you are lifting everybody's hope, etc. You're connecting everybody to the aspirations of the organization or your team or your own personal journey, etc. It could be many things. Then the other point is empathy. as we already talked about, empathy, being able to understand the other person's perspective and responding. So this is an important area of your journey. You have to be not only self-aware of the situation, not only regulated, not only providing the motivation, you have to be sometimes and often in the other person's shoes, because as I mentioned, that everybody comes through different journeys in life, and everybody's social reality and mental makeups are driven by the set of circumstances and cultural orientation that they had moved through. So you have to be a wise leader in that sense, in understanding empathetically what that person may be feeling, and channeling your energy and motivation and your direction based on that. That is important. And the last one is actually all of those combined: social skills, ability to navigate through difficult issues, ability to motivate people, ability to convey your message, bringing people together, making people happy, uh, getting people to discuss, talk about certain things, um, you know, break if there is a confusion or a conflict, having the ability to negate the situation by coming up with funny quips and a high spirited discussion, so people slowly become less stressful, etc. These are part of your social moral skills. So that is important as a leader with proper emotional intelligence. And a good person having proper emotional intelligence must have good social skills. Can you move to the next slide, please? Can you move to the next slide, please? We need the next slide. Okay. We had talked about empathy, so I don't want to go into detail on what is empathy, but here is a definition. Golden Rogers defined empathy as accurately perceiving the internal frame of reference of another. In other words, empathy is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing. Very important. What others are experiencing or feeling uh, deep down in their soul is important. If you can go into their soul, into their mindset, and understand and extricate their passion and their thought process, then you will be a good leader. So, empathetic person is a great person to discuss things. And normally, people who are having difficulty in life, in professional or personal lives, will automatically be moving towards people who are empathetic, so that they can shoulder some of their sorrows and burdens, so that the other person responding can give them some solace, give them some constructive guidance, and offer them some uh, suggestions and advice. So that's very important. So as a leader, you must have that particular wing within your timeline of discussions with your team members. If you are always a manager with just performance and KPI, then ultimately it will be boring. So you don't want to be in that type of shoes. You want to be an empathetic manager, where you are going to talk about your KPIs, you're going to talk about performance, everything, but you will also have a window to discuss about the families, discuss about any issues that a leader as a member in the house is having difficulty. So you have to be able to balance the two. Can you move to the next slide, please? So leadership and social skills. We talked about social skills previously. So here is a perspective. You, as a social skills, is the ability to manage your conversation in any environment. In other words, you might be thrown into very interesting conversation, or a difficult conversation, or conversations where you don't particularly have the knowledge. But if you have good social skills, then you can wing your conversation. You can pick ideas from the discussions of the other people, and then frame your own conversations and thread your conversations into the set of people, so that people don't feel that we are sitting across someone who doesn't have any understanding of what the process is all about, what we're talking about. So this is very important. a good leader must have good social skills, as we mentioned before. A leader must have decent social skills, absolutely. In its aid, emotional intelligence, common sense, empathy, clear vision of things, view of the environment are important. What is being aided for a person with good common sense, good common, good emotional intelligence, good empathy is all of these issues combined. So, if you want to have a good social skills, you must be empathetic. You must have a proper vision. You must be understanding the commonsensical approach of things that are being understood. For example, I'll give you an example. If there is a death in a family, and if you go there and you start talking about your career amidst all the people, you might be a very bright person, but that is not the right environment to talk about your career. So you must have that commonsensical perspective of where to talk on what issue. And that is also being empathetic, because people are feeling very remorse. People are feeling unhappy that somebody in their family has expired, and now you're talking about your career, your future, everything in a, let's say, side discussion. That is not very proper. You're not empathetic. You don't have the common sense. And obviously, not having all of that hits your understanding level. It shows that you don't have the emotional intelligence that is needed to navigate through this in this professional sphere, or even in your social sphere. So that's very important. You need to know what conversations to table at what points, and what environment. So that's very important. Move to the next slide, please. These are influences, situations that are important in life that can actually enhance your ability as a leader, or bring in sizable outcome, or it can also destroy you as a good leader. So you have to at certain times hold your passion, bring in rationality. Certain times you have to deliver through passion and have a subdued rationality in order to get certain ultimate objective. You can't be holding ego. You can't be having the attitude and behavior problem and feel that I have good emotional intelligence. It's not going to work that way. You must have a must be able to tame your ego, your attitude and behavior in order to be a person who will probably be a better communicator, and a person who would be properly responded to, and therefore you will have better emotional intelligence and you will be a better leader. Your understanding levels have to be significantly strengthened in order for you to be a better leader. And those situations, if you don't have a good understanding, then obviously your strength as a leader will come down. Low IQ, EQ, we already talked about. This is important. If your emotional quotient or intelligence quotients are down, then obviously you will not be in a proper frame of reference to understand the situation, and you will not be able to give the right output for that right scenario. And that way, things will be complex and confusing, and it may even increase the level of complexity and conflict. Whereas you went there to reduce the conflict, you, due to your conversation, your thought process and the way you conveyed the message, it actually escalated. So not good at all. So you have to have that capacity to understand the situation and use your high IQ and EQ to respond. Stress and mind not open. When you are very stressful, you don't want to listen to other people. That's reality. It's happens everywhere, even for a leader. So the whole point of being a good person in a good leadership shoe, having good emotional quotient is intelligence, is to have a stress-free life. You have to take actions in order to reduce your stress. In future, we will have sessions where we'll focus only on stress and how leadership can be evolved by managing your stress. And then the last one is mental makeup. When you have all of these together, you have a significantly altered mental makeup. You are actually a better human being. You are a better leader. You have a proper traits of a true inspired person with whom others would love to resonate, others would love to integrate, interact with. And that's when you're, through emotional intelligence, you become a good leader. So, can you move to the next slide, please? I think that will end my presentation. Yes, I normally have a $1 million question, and today's $1 million question is: should emotion be given more value to compared to rationality, especially for a leader? Technically, these are not two diverse constructs. They have an interplay, they have an overlay amongst each other. A good emotional person can must have good rationality, and vice versa. A person with proper rationality will also be fairly good in terms of emotional understanding. So they are not two difficult diverging constructs. They have certain overlay, they have certain places where they 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 can work together. So I think a balance is important, but when it's a very complicated case and it's a do or die kind of situation, you might have to take on, being a leader, you might have to take on a rational position. At certain times, you may have to take on an emotional position. For instance, if there is a law and certain things that happen, which can be addressed through the law, and a decision will be taken which might be unfair um, from a point of view of society. It might be unfair, but the law says you have to do this, but you, at certain points, you might have to overstep the law and take a certain slightly different direction, which might be, I wouldn't call it breaking of law, but it is adding another flavor or another angle to the law and take a certain decision. Sometimes it's very important. So a leader with proper emotional intelligence must have both, but it is based on a situational circumstances. So I cannot say for sure it is always emotion that should supersede rationality or vice versa. I cannot say that. I would say that given these circumstances, one of the two will be given priority, but given particular circumstances. So if you're falling in particular circumstances, you as a leader have to understand the environment, understand the social issues, understand the positioning of the people and the mindset, and make your judgment on that. I'm not asking you to make popular judgment. I'm asking you to make the right judgment, but sometimes you have to bring in emotion and sometimes you have to bring rationality in furthering your judgment. So thank you very much. With that, I would like to end my session, and we welcome you to tune in with our session next week, same time. So back to you, Edward Probimondo. If you have any queries and questions, feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much for your presentations, and we're very happy that we conducted this session. And with that, I would like to invite you for our next session, which will be held on next week, same time. For Canada, it is in Edmonton. It is on Wednesday at 9 p.m. at Eastern Standard Time, Mountain Standard Time, and in Toronto, Ottawa, at 11 p.m. That is Eastern Standard Time. And in Bangladesh, Dhaka, it is 10 a.m. on Thursday morning. And, and in India, it is 9:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time on Thursday morning. So with that, thank you very much. Those who are following with us, if you have any queries and questions, you can email us at info@prerona.tv, or you can comment us through our uh, official Facebook page, Prerona Television. And once again, I would like to thank Advocate Jiaur Rahman for your wonderful presentations, and we would like to continue our sessions in next week. With that, now stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you.